James McGibney is a cybersecurity expert who has made it his mission to use his skills to help people victimized by revenge porn, for one thing. He found out about a site that victimized people that were so innocent and minding their own business. You may have seen the docuseries on Netflix. I think it was The Most Hated Man on the Internet, a guy by the name of Hunter Moore. James devised a plan to shut that all down, and we're going to talk about how he does what he does. Are people still doing that kind of thing today? We don't want to name them and give them any attention, but are there other sites?
And a lot of them live on the dark web. And for audience members who aren't aware what the dark web is, the dark web is a very small sliver of the actual internet, let's say about 5%, 5 to 7%. But it is the wild, wild west. You know, you need a special browser just to get to the dark web, but you can get anything on the dark web. Look at companies like Silk Road that operated on the dark web. You could order drugs, have it delivered to your house via the dark web. You could hire a hitman. You can go on the dark web even now today in this political environment. And if you're a Republican and you're having an online dispute with a Democrat on social media, there you go on the dark web and you can hire someone to go harass and stalk the person you're having a fight with for a couple grand. They will stalk them online. They will stalk their children online. And in some instances, they will physically stalk them.
And if these bad actors can get on the dark web, then so can the FBI and the county sheriff and other people. Do they do that? Do they get on there and track this activity?
They do. And that's how they ended up getting Silk Road. You know, the problem is, and God bless law enforcement, you know, I'm a huge supporter of them. You're really limited what you can do. So if someone comes to you and says, my naked images ended up on the dark web, the law enforcement's really limited what they can do. If you even, serve a subpoena, you've somehow found a server somewhere where you're able to issue a subpoena, even if you got the results of the subpoena, the chances are pretty good the IP address information, the location you get, is not where that person actually is. They've obfuscated their IP address and they're in another country altogether. So it's a never-ending rabbit hole. And that's where Bullyville comes into play. I bypass all of that. Once again, I believe in what law enforcement does. I wish them all the best, but I can just get past all of that and target that individual server or site on the dark web.
Scammers are getting smarter.
They are. Hackers are some of the smartest people in the world.
And they're getting really sophisticated.
Yeah.
They have good computers. They have good computer skills.
Yep.
And we're just normal consumers. There's a real mismatch here.
Oh, it's not fair. It's definitely not fair at all. And that's why, I was looking at that stat earlier of over $1 billion of scams in 2022 from 60-year-olds and older. That's a staggering statistic if you think about that.
All right. Now, can you remove your personal information from the internet?
Somewhat. So there's a lot of aggregators of your information, where you live, your phone number, things like that, where one company feeds 30 other companies online with that information. You can contact, like Intellectus, for example. There's a number of them you can contact and tell them you want your information removed, and they'll remove it. So there are ways to do it. If it's on the dark web, no.
Can't get it off.
It's tough. I mean, we have ways, the average person, no. It would be very difficult to do because the problem is, credit reports are the biggest thing. Credit reports and credit card numbers are on the dark web more than anything else. To buy those two things, you're not getting that removed as the average consumer. And now the hacker has everything about you. So they can do a number of phishing, vishing, whatever it may pretexting, whatever it is. They have all that information about you. So when they call you and they say they're from the IRS and they tell you your social security number, you're most likely going to say, okay, well, this is a legitimate call. They have my social security number and they know the last 3 places I've lived. Little do they know that the hacker got that information off of the dark web.
Isn't it safe to say that any legitimate company, whether it's Amazon, eBay, agency like IRS, the state government, the sheriff's office, whoever, no legitimate entity is going to call you requiring urgent information for you to release or pay cash in any way at any time that you don't have time to call the mothership and find out if it's right. No matter what they're threatening,
Yep.
we're coming to your house to
arrest you. Yeah.
if you don't pay X within the next 30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
That's a risk you've got to be willing to take,
That's
right?
a fear.
Because that's just simply not going to happen.
That's right. The IRS is a great example. They're going to send you a letter for sure. And in most instances, depending on what it is, it might be a certified letter, one you have to sign for. They're not just going to cold call you and say, you owe us $5,000 and you have a half hour to pay it, or you're going to go to jail. But and once again, that's the issue when they focus on the elderly. They don't know of those scams. A lot of them don't know that these scams exist, and they've never even, received a phone call from the IRS before. So the fear, that's the thing with hackers. They want to instill fear and emotion. It's that emotion that they want to pull out of you, because when you're fearful, you're not always thinking straight.
I have some great expert lawyers with me today. Tracy Siska, Laura McNeal, Steve Greenberg, and Exavier Pope. We're talking about the confidence man, the con man, the scams that they run. And they're internet scams, there are mail scams, there are phone scams. But I promise you, before the end of this month, some scammer, some con man is going to intersect with you in your life one way or another. What are the signs? I mean, we need to tell people, because you guys know, you see this all the time. From a legal point of view, what are the signs? Because I always tell people, one, for example, places like the government, the IRS, they don't call you.
They don't.
They do not call you. My mother was called, and she called me and said, the IRS called. No, they didn't. No. I didn't even let her finish the sentence. So the IRS called and said, I owe $2,300. No, they didn't. The IRS does not call you. That's the first thing, right? If they call and say, hey, listen, they're getting ready to garnish your bank accounts, they're getting ready to seize all your... No, that's not true. They don't call, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't threaten to arrest you either. Another client talked to me about her being threatened to be arrested. I said, if they were going to arrest you, they'd be at your door. They're not threatening you.
There's a
and do
DEA
something.
scam that's going on it's been going on for at least a decade now, where people get a call from, hey, we're with the DEA and you've been buying illegal drugs. And some of the people, the law of averages, right? Some people say, I haven't been buying any drugs at all. But some people are either buying illegal drugs or they're buying drugs, legitimately, but now they're scared. And, you have to send this much money as a civil penalty or we're going to arrest you. That's been going on for years.
Right. I think the best advice I would give is, number one, if it looks too good to be true, it's probably true. Trust your instincts. People ignore their instincts and say, I knew something was off. Trust your instincts. And I think it's also important to make sure, if they're asking you to transfer any account numbers, if someone's calling you, cold calling you and asking you for your account number, or to transfer funds anywhere, those are huge red flags. And again, my mother's been scammed a million times, a bank calling, allegedly her bank saying they need to lock her account down. It's been compromised. We need your account number. And so I think those are three major red flags, as you would say, to look out for.
And I think also these same scammers, ask them for their information. Ask ways to verify them. And when you start asking questions about verifying them, and then they'll start to back off. They don't want to get their information. They don't want a legitimate email attached to a company that you can actually research and look at.
That's the sign. That's where you hear click.
Click.
Right. Ask
Or
a
if they have
question.
a foreign accent, a real thick foreign accent, and they say they're from the IRS.
Yeah, the
That's
IRS,
probably
the IRS knocks. That's what they do. They don't call.
That's the language they use.
Right.
Yeah.
Knock on the door.
And scammers pressure you to act immediately. You got to act on this right now.
I'm on someone's list for car insurance, and it's like insurance, even though we got done with the payments. So a car that got totaled in an accident many years ago now and is gone. But like every 6 months, we're contacted by email and mail. They're just hard after us on this scam related to our old car that's 3 or 4 years, 4 years gone from us.
Well, one of the things that I am stunned by are these romance scams out of Nigeria. We do the catfish shows about these people, and I thought I had seen it all until recently I had a woman on that was convinced that this was the love of her life. 2 years, never met him, never done a FaceTime with him, hadn't done a phone call with him. It was all text, and she had sent him about $300,000. I had her on the show. He had stolen these pictures from somebody. She only had 6 pictures, and he was sending her all these love letters and stuff like that. I found the guy whose pictures were stolen, had him on satellite so she could see the real person, said, I'm so sorry, that's not me. I had my picture stolen. Said, you see the guy? All these documents he had sent, he was stuck in Africa and construction site, had been robbed on the way to the airport, excuse after excuse after excuse. She said, oh my God, I feel so stupid. She left the show. The guy started talking to her again. She sold her house and sent him the money.
Wow.
After the show?
After
After
I
all that
introduced him on satellite that it wasn't him, and she sold her house and sent him the money to come meet her. He didn't show. She came back on the show still believing he was real. I brought the real guy in from North Carolina. She only had 6 pictures. We brought the 6 shirts he was in the pictures in, showed her him and the 6 shirts, and let her meet him in person. And she now swears she totally believes it this time. But here's this woman that worked 30 years, gave him all of her money, sold her house, gave him all the money, has nowhere to live, totally broke.
But I don't, that doesn't sound like that. Sounds like it started out as a scam, and there might be some issues that she has. If you had her on and she knew it wasn't, it wasn't real.
The key is romance.
Yeah,
The key is romance, because the center of romance, people want this fairy tale life. And the person that's on the romance scam, they're utilizing these fantasy and taking advantage of that. The person is conjuring in their mind all these different scenarios. And so even when they're presented with the fact that it isn't true, what they're doing is going along. This is part of the romance, the adventure, the intrigue. Oh, wow, now it's Dr. Phil is involved. They even brought another guy with pictures. This is all playing into the element of excitement that's with romance.
And also, they always promise, when I come, I'm coming with millions. We have an epidemic going on right now that has to do with fentanyl laced into a variety of drugs and counterfeit pills that our kids are buying on social media. And this is something that you may think you are aware of. I thought I was aware of in terms of the scope, and got a rude awakening in the last week to 10 days as I was preparing for a show. We have kids, young adults, teenagers that are dying as we speak because they are buying counterfeit pills laced with fentanyl. They think they're buying one thing, but they're buying something else. True?
Right. So, and it's not just the pills that are killing right now, Dr. Phil. It's fentanyl mixed in with cocaine, fentanyl mixed in with methamphetamine, fentanyl even mixed in with marijuana. There are some cases in America with fatalities, but what we really have is 275 to 300 a day in America are dying from drugs. The CDC most recent statistics in a 12-month period ending June of 2021 reveal 101,263 dead Americans from drugs. It's also now the leading cause of death for all Americans aged 18 to 45. But we are seeing many kids as 12 years old dying, 13, 14, 15.
When you say it's a leading cause, specifically, what are you saying is the leading cause?
Fentanyl poisoning, okay? They call it fentanyl overdoses, but I call it poisoning because that's what it is. More prevalent than COVID deaths, car accidents, and even suicide.
Okay, so we're not talking about just drug use. We're talking about fentanyl poisoning in the drugs that are being purchased.
Right. A great example, Dr. Phil, is some 14-year-old sees his mother taking Xanax, has no idea what it is, goes online and it says it's for anxiety and depression. So that person then wants to get some Xanax. They'll take a pill from mom's pill bottle, feel great, feel really good, take another pill. But then when the supply's out, we'll go to Snapchat, go to social media, try to buy one. But unfortunately, the fake pills that are being sold on the internet are coming from Mexican cartel labs, and they're making fentanyl-laced pills, and they're making all types of different products with fentanyl, which is killing Americans at record levels, as they have a lethal relationship with the Chinese transnational criminals as well.
Well, we're going to talk about that some more in a minute, including the drug laundering. But Tim, he says they're going online and buying this. Now, you're CEO and co-founder of the health and technology company S3 Research, and this was created to identify illicit drug dealers online. What does that mean? You've got stakeholders like Google, YouTube, Snapchat, because you're trying to find and ferret out these people that are selling these drugs online. So how are they doing that? How is this working, Tim?
First, a little bit of background on the company. It was actually started by a federal grant from the government. So the U.S. taxpayer is supporting the development of this crucial public technology that focuses on a need that a lot of technology companies aren't meeting, and that is removing illicit drug dealers on their platforms. And so the problem is that these drug dealers are across all the platforms, across all parts of the internet, including internet search engines, social media, and the dark web. And in order to understand their tactics and their marketing approaches and how they entice people to buy their products, you really have to have a landscape view of what's going on. So they're very aggressive in marketing. They're just like any other marketer. They use hashtags. They use very descriptive images of what they're trying to sell. They target certain users on these platforms because they're talking about substance use disorder or they're talking about other things. And they are very much socially active, reaching out to people, trying to get them to buy their products.
You say that we've seen a volume of around 80 to 90,000 dealers on social media over the past 2 years across different media platforms?
Yeah, and we see even more as we look into new platforms such as Discord and Telegram that are more encrypted and private. That number just keeps going up, and that could include people who are active drug dealers who are posting messages. It could be comments to other users trying to get them to buy drugs, and it could be other types of advertising material. And yeah, it's the scope is really hard to grasp.
Dr. Nicholas Kardaras, he is an expert on addiction involving technology. When you break it down like this, like we're talking about, we know the brain changes with sleep deprivation. We know there are brain changes with these exposures to screen and then with some of the content. Lassie could figure out that this is a bad combination here, but yet we seem to just keep pedaling right down the road into this, which is why I wanted to do this and have this conversation so parents understood. Not only does the research say that these dangers are obtaining, but it's not just correlational. If you look at the factors here, the changes in the brain, the social impact with the depression and suicide in response to the hate messages and the, why don't you just kill yourself? You're ugly, you're this, you're that. I suppose we still have to say it's correlational because we can't draw a bright red line from those messages to some 12-year-old girl attempting to take her life or actually taking her life. But it's awfully hard to ignore the juxtaposition of those experiences. And parents just have to pay attention to that. They just can't pretend that's not there.
And I think the other thing that I think is important to keep in mind, I said earlier that this has not been by accident. You have big tech and some very sophisticated people that work designing these platforms. And I think it was a blessing when we had Frances Haugen, the Facebook whistleblower. She came out last year and she showed us the internal emails. of Meta and Instagram. And their own internal research showed that these platforms were harmful to young people. Suicidality in teenage girls went up 12% in England, 6% in the US. Eating disorders were exacerbated by 17%. Their own internal research said our stuff is toxic. And the internal email dialogues were, should we change the algorithms to make them less harmful? And it was no, because the less toxic the algorithm, the less engagement. And so it was it's a similar thing to the Purdue Pharmaceuticals and OxyContin, where they knew that their product was habit forming and harmful, and yet they sold it anyway. To Big Tobacco, where Big Tobacco knew it was a carcinogen, but they marketed Joe Camel to kids anyway. So that's where I think a curse on their houses, because it's one thing if a company doesn't realize, oops, maybe our product, we didn't realize there was some harms happening, but by their own admission, these were designed to be habit forming. By their own research, they're harmful. So now you have, like it was just in the news 3 days ago, the Seattle School District is suing Meta and Snapchat for harming the mental health consciously of young people. So we as the parents should begin to sort of put up some guardrails and realize that this is a by design, well orchestrated attack on our young people. And our young people, you were saying before when you worked with some Olympic athletes who got burnout after a certain point. Well, our young people are experiencing burnout, but they're in a digital cage that big tech has trapped them in, but it's a sugar-coated cage that they like the taste of. And so they're not saying, I want to check out yet, because even though they're self-destructing and their lives are collapsing and becoming smaller and smaller, they like the taste of the cage that they're in because it's tickling that dopamine there. So they're not opting out yet.
What are first steps that you recommend for them to do? And as you say, if it's extreme, they probably need professional help. They probably need your treatment centers. They probably need to be in there. But for those that want to take first steps, what do you recommend?
Yeah, I think young kids and teenagers, they don't like being told what to do, right? So if you're sort of that nagging parent or grandparent, you get shut out you become that Charlie Brown teacher, wah, 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 in the background.
Yeah.
But I found that kids respond because they don't like to be manipulated, showing them something like The Social Dilemma, that documentary, which pulled back the curtain from big tech, the engineers of big tech saying, hey, this is how we're manipulating you. And I have had young people respond really positively to, what? I'm being manipulated by these people? It's like, yeah, so you're not being a rebel. You're not a rebel. You're a rebel without a cause right now because you're just being monetized and manipulated. And 14 and 16-year-olds respond to that if you show them
right.
a well-produced documentary like that can be eye-opening for some of them. Because if you're just going to sort of drone on and on that get off your device, you're going to get shut out eventually. So showing them some of the research, showing them some of the ways that they're being manipulated can be really helpful, in addition to giving them other things to engage in, backdooring some recreational activities, going out for a trip, or if it's camping, or having them join Boy Scouts or Girl, any kind of experience that can backdoor in less time on screens without even doing it overtly. They don't even have to know that that's what you're doing, can be helpful.
Yeah, get them where there's no connectivity.
Right. Go to camp, go to some other types of experiences where they don't want to go to a digital detox boot camp, but they might want to go to a surf camp, or they might want to go to, a horse ranch for 6 weeks over the summer. These are things, and by the way, there's no phones allowed, but that's not what you're going there for. You're going there to get a nature experience.
Well, that's great advice.